Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Elephant in the Room Stands Bite-Sized podcast series. I'm Kat, and I'll be your student host for the series. We aim to create space for honest conversations around topics that are possibly uncomfortable and intimidating to address, but are too important to ignore. Our goal with the series isn't to have all the answers, and we won't pretend to be perfectly neutral either. But we have invited expert voices who share Stan's commitment to global justice, equity, and sustainability. Some of what you hear may challenge reviews, and that is okay. We would love to hear your thoughts, so join the conversation and let's keep exploring these complex issues together. In this episode, The Elephant That Felt Out of Place, I had the pleasure of chatting with Lavender-Jane Gartlan, the president of IADT Student Union, on all things trans. She generously shared her experience of being trans in Ireland, the joy and beauty of it, as well as the difficulties that she and other trans people face, from the exhaustion of having to constantly defend and protect their own identities, to navigating tricky conversations with family and friends. She spoke of the value and importance of being an ally, and offer suggestions on how to do just that. It's a fantastic conversation. Take a listen. So hi Jane, do you want to say something about yourself or?
Hi, so my name is Lavender-Jane Gartlan. Everyone just calls me Jane, and I use she, her pronouns. I am a trans person. I've been a trans person in Ireland with the lived experience of nearly 10 years. I've been an activist for over 10 years, fighting for human rights issues, and did loads of volunteer work with Amnesty International. So, it's always been my passion to stand up for people.
Thank you so much for taking your time to be here with us. First off, I guess we'll kick off with the first question for discussion. So what do you think make transgender issues a so-called elephant in the room? And I'm really curious in hearing about your own personal journeys.
So what I think makes trans issues kind of that elephant in the room topic is very much people's lack of knowledge and lack of personal experience. Like a lot of the things that we see mainly online is from people that don't have the lived experience of being trans or being around people that are trans. And it's that fear of not knowing and not knowing something, and the lack of education and people not being able to access that information or accessing the appropriate information. We've seen it time and time again, ignorance is bliss, but it's so damaging to society if you're just not going to educate yourself on these very prevalent issues. And this is not just this is a lived experience of many, regardless of race, age, or their class background. Transness has always been around and will always be around. So I think the elephant in the room topic about it is just from the fear of not knowing what to do or not having the education or the words to talk about it.
Thank you for answering the question. So maybe move to the next one. How did you then gradually become comfortable with who you are, and what obstacles that you overcome to get here? So more about your personal journeys.
So kind of obstacles that I faced. I came out as trans a long while ago, nearly 10 years ago, or over 10 years ago. I can't remember the exact date, but when I came out, there wasn't any information out there really. It was still kind of a hush thing, and all of the information that I was getting was a lot from online and organizations like Tenny, and even trans people. I was the only trans person that I knew, and I was coming out to my family, my friends, my school, and I was the one doing all the educating and telling them what was the best way to basically look after a trans person. That was me. So doing a lot of self advocacy from a young age was was a big obstacle to overcome, but I definitely was the right person to do it. But it's definitely something that like shouldn't be left for trans people. Like, trans people are the best people to understand what they need, what we need, and how to look after ourselves, and how to appropriately interact with ourselves and other trans people. But when it's left to us, it can be quite damaging in that, like, it's a lot of responsibility, it's a lot of pressure, it's a lot of pressure to kind of point out the discrimination that we might face, or subtle misgendering remarks, or very overt misgendering remarks. It's a lot to kind of put that on one person, to constantly have to defend their own identity. And a lot of people, mainly like a lot of cisgendered people wouldn't know that or know what that's like. But having to like constantly defend and like protect your own identity is like so exhausting, and is definitely like the biggest obstacle for people to know. Like, you're not just like coming out as trans isn't just coming out to one person as trans, it's coming out to every person, and most likely every person for the rest of your life to some degree.
Yeah, so. I mean, I can't really imagine how difficult it must have been for you and also like other trans people, like just having to already find out who you are and already have to kind of explain yourself to others. And some people kind of just do not understand it, and some they just do not want to understand, and it's like really hard to kind of navigate
and
that.
I've had so many conversations with people, and I've had conversations with people who don't even know that I'm trans, or talk to me about trans things or issues or particular trans topics, and not knowing like my background or my friends or my experiences. And it is like being trans can, like, it's beautiful, it's great, there's so much joy to it. Like, I'm so happy that I can be who I am, and happy that I am confident in who I am now. But like, that constantly having to like defend your own identity is so, it can be so difficult at times. And then like having that, you know, it can be that one thing, that the straw that broke the camel's back, you know, like, it can be that one thing at the end of a day that can just be so upsetting to you. And it's like, it's not that one thing, it's the weeks, it's the months, it's the years of constantly having to defend yourself. It can be a lot, but there is also so much joy and so much happiness about trans people and being trans.
Yeah, and I think it's really amazing that you also now doing advocacy work to support the community and like other people who are trying to find themselves, and like also, yeah, just to navigate this whole thing. Yeah. So, so what strikes me is that there is no single story here, like, you know, in the news, as you also kind of mentioned, and also social media, which is very polarized. We often hear a lot of negative statements about transgender issues. So, from just your own experience with advocating, but also with your own journey, what advice would you give to people here who are trans, and who, as well as who are allies and are supportive of the trans community? Like, for example, if when in a case we find ourselves at the dinner table with family and then they say all these awful things about trans people, how would you say we go about that?
Yeah. Like, my advice to any trans person, and especially like younger people who are just realizing that they're trans, and the same for older people who realize that they're trans, being trans doesn't look one way, and transitioning there isn't one way to do it. There's no right way to transition. Everyone's transition is different. How everyone wants to transition is different, and what people are able to do and what they want to do can have so many factors at play that can prevent them. It's a lot more than just like, I'm trans and I have to do XYZ and that will make me trans and everyone will now see me the way I want to be seen. It's like there's a lot of factors, a lot of variables that can impact someone's transition, but also then people's wants and desires. Not everyone wants to do things that I did because of my transition, or likewise I don't want to do things that other people have done in their transition. Then to allies, it's so important to show support to the trans community. The trans community at the end of the day is very small. There's a small number of people. I think the statistics in the world is that like the same amount of people that are ginger is the same number as people that are trans. There's a very small number of us. So having having allies and having people show their support is so important, and it is so important to like stand up against injustice when you see it towards trans people, and like that when you're at the dinner table and someone makes a comment that's not very pleasant. It can be really uncomfortable. It can be really awkward on like how to address that and how to point it out, that the things that someone is saying because of their lack of awareness or lack of experience with trans issues, how to point that out. And my best advice is just to be open, like not to take anything to heart, to listen to someone, to listen to them out, like where are they getting these ideas from, where has this come from, what's their rationale behind this. And usually you'll find that it is just a lack of knowledge, or a lot of, oh, I didn't know that, or oh, I didn't know that was that now. Or it's people's nervousness as well, of like how to ask someone. Like there's definitely a lot of fear of asking a trans person about their identity, because you don't want to offend, or you don't want to overstep as well. Like that might not be something someone's comfortable talking about, or you could ask them about something and they're like, why do you care? Like, it's none of your business, you know? So reaching out to appropriate resources when you have questions. Organizations like TENI, Transgress the NGS, Trans Harm Reduction, Belong To, like there's so many organizations out there that have resources and have supports. And you can also show your support to those by like donating to them and going to events, showing up to Trans Pride. But yeah, I think then like a practical situation, it's okay to ask someone about their pronouns. Like it's so okay if you're meeting someone, whether they're cis or trans. I do it to everyone, or I try and do it to everyone, of like the minute I meet someone just being like, oh hi, what's your name and what pronouns do you prefer? And if someone turns around and they say, I don't use any pronouns, you do use pronouns. Everyone uses pronouns. Like pronouns are literally just, do you like being called he? Do you like being called she? Do you like being called they? Or do you have another way you like to be referred to? And it's, yeah, if you're meeting someone for the first time, just start slipping it into your everyday conversation, and eventually it'll just become second nature, and no one would be offended by it. And if someone is, that's their problem.
I would say is like just to continue learning, educating yourself, and also just be supportive and like show up for events and take part, and also be respectful of people, as I say, and also like respect their individuality in a sense, because they may have preferences and everything. So you mentioned that some trans people, they do transition differently. I don't think I quite understand what that means. Would you feel comfortable explaining it a little bit more?
Sorry, I'm trying to think of like, where do I start with that? There's like so many. So like I identify as a trans woman, but some people like identify as a trans man, some people identify as non-binary, but maybe looking at non-binary, there's some people that identify as non-binary and they're very happy with just identifying as non-binary. They don't want to, they just want to socially transition, so they would come out and say, maybe they'll change their name, and maybe they'll want to go by different pronouns than they usually were using. So them coming out as non-binary and socially transitioning is them maybe dressing more appropriate to how they feel about their gender identity, using a name that fits more to their identity, and then using pronouns. Some non-binary people want to also medically transition. So that might include having top surgery, so removing any excess tissue on the chest. That might also include getting like breast augmentation. Like, I never wanted to have breast augmentation, but there's some people that are like, oh, you're a trans woman, you want to get your boobs done. I'm like, no, I don't want to get my boobs done. But other people, that's very important to their identity, and it's very important to them that they get that done and they have that surgery. Sometimes people want to transition with hormone or HRT and hormone replacement therapy. Other people might not be able to have hormones. It might like have a negative impact on their body. They might not feel comfortable having it, so they don't have it. But it doesn't make them any less trans, and it doesn't make their transition any more or less significant than someone else's just because they're doing it a different way. So just not to kind of think that, oh, all trans people, all trans people get surgeries and all trans people get hormones and all trans people want to change their name. Some trans people don't want to change their name. Some trans people can't financially or can't medically get hormones. And then some people just don't want surgery or do want surgery.
Yeah, I think for me it's pretty clear now. It's just like kind of comes down to personal choice and preference as well. And yeah, not everyone wants to do the same thing. It's just because they're trans, because like it's anyway their journey is different.
And like hair, like taking away like gender, like, or the gender stereotype. Like, there's women who want to have really, really long hair. There's women that want to have medium length hair, and there's some women that like to have short hair. And it's like they all, whatever way their hair is to make them feel more comfortable in their identity. And it's the same then with trans, but because it has that trans label on it, it makes it that uncomfortable topic. When it's like, when you actually break it down, everyone does do things to align to their own gender identity. There isn't anything far off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so do you think there is enough representation of trans people in higher level organizations, government, politics, etc.? And does this affect institutions like schools or university as well, and their inclusion policies?
I mean, absolutely. Like, even just like having diversity of gender in any aspect, like trans, cisgender, like if you don't have people there representing a community, they're most likely not going to get represented appropriately. I think it's in Limerick and Cork, there's a few more political leaders that are that identify as trans, and I'd love to see them like in government, and I'd love to see them like changing the world. In like younger people figuring out their identity because of the easy access of information now. So I'd say it'd be a few more years, but it is happening. Of like, there is more trans people are getting into like higher up positions, which I'm very proud of.
That's really good to hear, even though it takes time. But yeah, we're kind of getting there. Yeah, I think also kind of linked to that. So how would you like to see society becoming more trans friendly, and also then maybe if in terms of government or legislation, like whether they have any policies that would help protect trans community. Not sure if that's the right word, but yeah, if you know what I mean.
I would love to see like a huge reform on the access of trans healthcare. When I first went to the National Gender Service, I was seen and was given a prescription in 3 months. Now, like, I have friends, I have colleagues that have waited 3-4 years to get an appointment on a waiting list. It is absolutely disgraceful that we are letting people in Ireland, and a significant large number of young people in Ireland on waiting lists that are 2 to 6 years long, just because they do not want to fund or improve or expand the only service in Ireland that is for trans people. And it's ridiculous. So if I was to say one big thing, it would be reforming access to healthcare. The same medication that is given to trans people is the same medication that is given to cis people. I have talked with doctors and I have had it said to my face that they will prescribe cis women who are experiencing menopause the same medication that I get for nothing. Like if a cis woman went into a GP this evening and was like, I'm experiencing menopausal symptoms, she will get the same medication that took me a year and two psychologist appointments to get. Policy wise, I would love to see something to protect trans people, because obviously the rise of the far right now like my fear especially is like that someone could attack me, or someone could do something to me. I'd hope I'd be able to stand up for myself, but like that, having something to protect trans people and having institutions educated on what trans issues are, so that even if something does happen to a trans person, that they don't feel scared going to talk about it, or feel that they will get any like judgment or prejudice against them because they're trans. I think is also important. So going back to the first question, education is a really big important step.
There's a lot to be done, but yeah, we're all trying to raise awareness and advocate for the rights of trans.
Like and that's it. Like as I said, like when I came out as trans, I was the only trans person I knew, and I was educating like my family, my friends, my secondary school on what it was. And now I'm a student union president of a college where there's over 100 trans people, and it's like, that's insane to me to think that like in the space of like 10 years how much it's grown, but also how we've nearly gone behind in some aspects, as I was saying with the healthcare stuff. So yeah, like we're definitely going in the right direction, but my god, they're taking their time.
Yeah, sometimes it takes too long, but yeah. I'm a bit cautious of the time, so I think I'm gonna try to wrap up. But yeah, really thank you for your very insightful sharing, and yeah, just advice and like sharing of your personal journeys. It's really our pleasure to have you here with us today. If you would like to send us any further comments or thoughts on this episode, do feel free to contact us at elephant@stan.ie. So you can ask questions about any of the episode, or also the episode for next week in advance of the session. And if you would like to engage more deeply with the pressing social issues, do consider joining us for a deeper dive and more interactive global issues course. You can find more information on the STAN's website, which is www.stan.ie. And we also have lots of projects, so do keep your eye on the website.